podcast.
What did they talk about?
They were playing it through. I don't know. I think they were like they're just being an anything podcast, all sorts of random stuff.
Lame.
And
who would do that?
well, at least ours has like a gimmick. But they were playing it back through Audible, and it was like super loud pops that had ruined their whole recording. It was their second time trying to record that episode. They seemed so sad.
My gosh.
So I wonder if there are technical difficulties in that booth. It seemed it's a very new setup. So if we had done it, we would have just had backups, and we wouldn't have sound any worse than we do now. But I want to try it sometime because at least we can be in the same room. That'll be nice.
Cool. So Jacob, is your audio fine? You said you're nervous about something.
I mean, I've done this the same way before and just still had some pops sometimes, like on the.
Oh, that's what I was gonna.
You like that, Joe?
That's what I was gonna do. I didn't even know that was a real thing.
Wait, that's your answer?
I have no real reason to be like particularly.
That's
nervous,
your answer for the tonight?
but I've just never really had.
I was gonna say that. Yeah, I can think of something else.
Yeah.
You can. Oh my gosh! Wow, this is embarrassing.
That's
all right. We are live. We are live on YouTube. I just posted the link on the Facebook page, so we might have a few people.
What's up,
watching
YouTube?
live.
It's your boy Discourse 6969. To you live.
Yeah, the unrated version is only live streamed.
I think it's funny. I think it's hilarious that you use different bleeping noises for each episode.
I love it so much when Kanan gets lightsabered.
Yeah. So no, the Star Wars bleeps are the blaster sound. Harry Potter is like a spell, or Dobby last episode. I haven't really had
a buzzer.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
That'll be really jarring.
Joe, are you for real searching for a new answer as we speak?
Yeah.
Wow.
I thought I was being clever with that one.
What was your answer?
I guess it was the same thing Jared was trying to do.
Dude, 538 just took in. They just took suggestions for like, I don't know. They made a whole article with a bunch of.
I know.
Yeah, I saw that article, but
the article is really good. Hey, is anybody doing the you tie your your draft pick is tied to someone else's record?
No,
I don't get that one. Else? Do you know whose record it's tied to?
Yeah.
But then, why would you not tank so that other people wouldn't get your?
Like they have your draft pick. So if you tank, then like if you tank,
then you get a better draft pick.
If you tank, then the other team gets a better draft pick.
Yeah, okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
That's kind of crazy.
Chris, Joe, and Jared, will you make sure you have enough memory on your phone to fit the recording again?
Bro, I got memory out the wazoo.
Memory for days.
My iMessage keeps messing up.
Once you confirm, we can get this thing rolling.
How much do I need?
Do we?
I don't know. Just make sure you have at least like half a gig of storage available.
Oh, half a gig?
Is that the one that won this argument? The NBA futures one?
I don't remember what won that argument.
Is it where you you own stock market style futures on another team?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, that's the one that won.
I have 100 gigs left. Yes.
What?
I've got 100 gigs on my phone left.
Shit.
All right. Well, are you guys ready to start your recordings?
Joe, this is going to be an all-time...
400. I've got a little less than half a gig.
What?
Right?
Your old voice memos.
I did. That's why I have so much room.
A half a gig is a lot of room for you?
Yeah, my phone is so bogged down. I'll delete some apps. That's what I usually do before podcast.
Yeah, that works.
Delete. Snapchat or Instagram. I'll delete Instagram.
I'm on the live thing.
Hello,
Hi, Danny.
Danny.
Hi,
It's
Danny.
really laggy though. I can hear you.
Yeah.
Like, wait,
There's a big delay.
Hi guys.
Hey, Danny.
Say hello to my wife, Noob Reaction fans.
I don't think anybody's.
Ooh.
They're probably gonna be like,
And
Oh,
you have
I'm
to have a
live?
channel to chat. I can't chat. I tried to
You
chat.
mean you have to log in to chat.
No, I did log in. You have to have a YouTube channel to chat.
Oh, well,
All
it's
the
an
Noob
exclusive
Reaction fans
club, I
thought
guess.
David was one of their own.
What if I just
They
They
argue
found out
that
he has a wife.
the new rules are
Okay.
enough?
Okay,
I
bye.
can't. Bye.
You
love
could.
you.
Yeah, you could argue that. You'd be so wrong. Oh my gosh, you'd be so wrong. But feel free to argue.
Well, I don't want to take just an answer from 538 that already won.
That's what I'm
Like,
doing.
I would have to cite them in my.
I mean,
I'm doing.
I don't think anyone actually has an original idea here.
Yeah. No
That's the
idea is original.
ever.
Some ideas are original.
No
Mine-
idea ever
Test.
is original.
Joe.
Mine was
Test.
original. I found it without looking at 538. I thought
Oh,
of it.
is that a fact?
Yeah, I thought of it on my own, and then you stole it from me.
Is that a fact?
I definitely called dibs, and you just didn't have the lingo to figure it out.
The lingo.
I watched Fellowship last night with Drake.
Ah,
Very nice to prepare
Great.
for the TV show that will come out in 5 years.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I'm pretty excited. We'll see how it goes.
a TV show could be dope, or it could.
All right. Is everybody ready to hit record?
No, one sec. Let me get my
Cassie.
article.
But what I fear most is that it would be average.
Okay, I'm ready.
Really? Average?
Chris, are you ready?
It would at least be
I'm pulling
funny
it up
if
right now.
sucked.
Yeah, at least if it sucked, you can like write it
Make
off.
Sick
You know,
memes.
It's like memes. That's true. Yep.
Like-
hey, good point.
Were you
I feel like
recording
The
when you said
Hobbit
that?
is an example of that. Like it was like okay.
Jacob,
but
what did you
I
say?
would rather it just be worse
I
or
was
better.
asking Jared if he was recording when he said, "Hey, sick memes." That's true. That would have been funny to have on audio.
No, I'm not. But I'm recording right
Chris,
now.
are you ready yet?
Okay, as am I.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. Everyone hit record and then we can clap.
Recording.
Clap in 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. One more time. 3, 2, 1. That should be sufficient.
Can you feel
La, tonight. Oh wow, that was good.
All right, I'll get started. Quiet, please, Joseph. One sec. Okay. Hey everyone, welcome back to Hostel Discourse. We are dedicating episode 23 to the GOATs of NBA basketball, Michael Jordan and LeBron James, both holding number 23 in their respective years of play. Also, first on tonight's episode, we are now live streaming on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/thenewbreaction. So I know if you're hearing this now, you missed out on the live stream. But look out next time for the live stream, the unedited, unrated version of the podcast. So you can type in the chat. Let us know your feedback if you think we picked the right winners for the debates or not. But I think it'll be a fun addition to the show. And tonight's episode, we'll be starting with open season, round 2. This week, we have Jacob giving us his argument on why basketball should have penalty boxes. So that should be interesting. And the debates for tonight. Debate number 1: what is the best way to disincentivize tanking in the NBA? And debate number 2: who is the greatest basketball player of all time? And before we get started, let me introduce you to tonight's crew. Back again, I think our most frequent guest, Chris Fisher from New York City.
Thank you for having me, all friends.
And my brilliant co-hosts, Jared Cozart in Tulsa.
Hey, gang.
Jacob Hunter, also in Tulsa.
Hello, loyal listeners.
And Joe Kuiper out of the lesser Oklahoman city, Oklahoma City.
Not lesser. We are home to the Thunder, the greatest NBA team of all.
You don't.
Are you really
believe
all of a
that.
sudden
You don't
Oklahoma
believe
City
that.
bandwagoner over Tulsa?
I mean, what do you mean? No, I think Tulsa's a better city.
The
but
Thunder
I really
suck
cheer
right
for the
now.
Thunder.
Yeah. I feel.
No, Tulsa's definitely the better city.
All right, let's kick it off with open season number 2. Jacob, you can take it away with your argument on penalty boxes in the NBA.
Friends, listeners, I recently came to a realization, and it is that I am obsessed with the rules of sports. Whenever I watch sports, I can't stop thinking about them. And to be honest, I'm normally surprised at how bad the rules are in major sports, and even more so, how content spectators are with letting them stay that way. And my number one least favorite rule in major sports is in the NBA. Now, I know this will be especially a surprise to my friends that are here on the podcast and maybe some of the listeners who have been on for long enough, but I actually do have some pretty unorthodox opinions about sports, if you could believe that.
What?
And here is my humble proposal. I've been examining this idea I've had for a long time, and the more I look at it, the more obviously correct and beneficial it seems. In the last 2 minutes of every NBA game, personal fouls should no longer fit the same rules they've had now. Any perpetrator of a personal foul in the last 2 minutes of an NBA game should go into an NHL style penalty box where they are not allowed to play for 24 play seconds. That's 24 seconds in actual game time. I came to this idea by observing that the NBA has a terrible problem, especially in playoff games. The last minutes of the games, if there is more than a 7-point deficit, the losing team will just incur a personal foul in order to increase their odds of winning, which defeats the point of a foul. A foul is supposed to be a penalty, and a penalty is supposed to be an incurred obstruction for poor execution of gameplay. The problem is the way they've set it up. At a certain point, if your team has enough fouls and you incur a personal foul, then the other team has an opportunity to shoot free throws. They have an opportunity to gain more points, but for the losing team, that is their better option, because otherwise they're just going to run the clock out and guarantee that they lose more time and possibly seal their own victory. So it's in the best interest of a losing team to incur a penalty. This is a terrible, terrible thing. The way you solve that is make a penalty much more punishing. So I looked at other sports that have a similar play style, like hockey or soccer, one where it's continuous and there's a ball or a puck moving around a lot. And hockey has a penalty box where if you incur a similar type of penalty, like a personal foul, then you go into the penalty box where you're not allowed to play for a certain amount of time, and the opposing team has to play with actually less players on the field or the court in this situation. This is a great setup because not only is it always in the team's lesser interest to incur a penalty, but it also sets up these great opportunities where a team can score shorthanded. How great is that when a team with fewer players can score points on the advantaged team? That is great sports and great entertainment. And it would be even greater in basketball in these in these playoff type scenarios where it can get really down to the wire. So it's not much. It's not a huge difference. It's only in the last 2 minutes. I think also a huge benefit is that it will speed up the play at the end of these games. They can drag out for so long, and the entertainment will go through the roof, as well as the integrity of the competition.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Please do.
So it's within the last 2 minutes, I believe you said,
Yes.
and the player committing the foul goes to the penalty box. There's no replacement, so it's 5-on-4. And
Correct.
there's no free throws. That person just goes to the penalty box.
Yes.
I love it.
Do you?
I think it's great. Like, I don't think it's too outside the kind of Overton window to be accepted. But I think it's an
Overton
awesome
window.
It's like a economic phrase of like things that are outside the realm of like general public mindset.
It's outside of my
Dang, bro.
mindset.
You have a
Sure.
master's of finance or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm confused because I feel like the end of the game is 90% about clock management. And if you take away a team's ability, the defending team or losing team's ability to stop the clock without losing one of their players, you're essentially giving the other team 35-second possessions unabated.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think that's a great thing because far too often, like Jacob said, these games just drag on for way too long. It's horrible to watch almost all the time. And unfortunately, it's successful, I don't know, maybe 5 to 10% of the time, which makes it worthwhile. But it shouldn't be about clock management. It should be about scoring and defending baskets like the rest of the game.
Yeah,
I agree.
I think it's only I think clock management is such an emphasis in the later parts of the game only because we have such terrible rules that put such an emphasis on clock management. I guess I can't argue with you if that's how you want basketball to be, but it's supposed to be a high-octane, nonstop sport. It would be better if the point wasn't how well can you stop play from happening. It should be about how well can you play basketball.
I'm a
fan.
I like it in the fact that it would force people to take the beginning of the game more seriously, like the first 3 quarters of the game more seriously.
Yeah, because isn't that among experts, I feel like that is a well-accepted idea that you're really just playing for the last quarter, right?
Yeah, but at the same time, at that point, nobody would want to watch that final 2 minutes because whoever's in the lead by 5 points, like they won.
Well, people don't want to watch the last 2 minutes anyway because if someone has a significant enough advantage, their fate is all but sealed. So you might as well get it over with, is what I'm saying.
But it would take out the comebacks and the buzzer beaters.
It wouldn't necessarily. It would just narrow the margin that comebacks are feasible in.
Yeah.
Like 5 points is still definitely doable. You just have to get 2 stops.
I cannot remember a single time, at least in a significant game, where I saw a team foul their way into a victory.
Texas A&M.
Yeah, I feel like most of us have probably seen it happen every now and then. But it's still like
gaff about basketball.
No, I agree. For every one of those you see, there are 20 that you see that are horrible to watch.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing, Jacob. Oh, go ahead, Big D.
No, I was just going to ask your thoughts, so you go ahead.
Oh, that makes me feel special. I thought somebody would laugh. All right. I've heard this before, and we've talked about this a little bit, and I've heard the criticism that the opportunity to shoot free throws is sufficient penalty to the opposing team, and if you can't make a freaking free throw, you don't deserve to get a handout of a penalty box. What do you say to that?
I'm not sure I understand.
I still think it's bad for the game. I think there are plenty of NBA players that aren't great free throw shooters. It's the way the game has gone. And so now it's in the best interest of the team losing to stop the game a lot, remove all flow, and make it a free throw shooting contest for one team.
Yeah. Okay.
And
sorry.
Regardless as to whether or not that should be required to win a game, it's bad to watch, and it seems contradicting to the overall nature of basketball.
Yeah. I've thought about what you said, and I understand it more now. And the idea is totally backwards of the current, at least like what I'm interpreting to be the central ideas to these rules. I think they're backwards because when a team incurs a penalty, you're not supposed to give an advantage to the other team. You're supposed to set back the team that incurred the penalty. So I think by principle, the question shouldn't be phrased as if you can't make free throws, you don't deserve a more safe penalty for you. You need to only be phrasing in the situation of like the team that is hypothetically incurring the penalty. You should say, if you want to intentionally incur a penalty, you don't deserve better chances at victory.
Yeah, I buy that. I buy that. So let me ask you this: why'd you choose the last 2 minutes? I mean, well, you kind of explained that, but what I'm thinking is, for example, when you have really bad free throw shooters like DeAndre Jordan or Shaq, they call it hack a Shaq, and they'll get to the bonus where any foul goes to the free throw line, and they'll just foul the person that shoots 40% from the free throw line at any point in the game. It could be first quarter. So
yeah, to be honest, I only said 2 minutes because I thought it would be more palatable to you guys, but you seem to all like it. Okay, so what I truly believe is that it should be the case for the whole game.
Oh wow!
Man.
Yeah, Joe, spit it out.
I like the idea of it being present for everything but the last 2 minutes. I just think the last 2 minutes are too important. I mean, I'm just picturing, even if you do play a perfect game and it gets down to, I mean, like both teams are tied, we'll say, and fouls just happen. I mean, you go down low on somebody and somebody gets an offensive charge or somebody gets a blocking foul, and like that person's now out of the game. And for the next however many seconds, you have a 5-on-4 advantage, which is huge. Just due to like regular.
But it's any team.
Gameplay.
Like either side, regardless, it no longer has to do with how many fouls occurred. Maybe defenses play a lot lighter, and that gives an advantage to the team with the lower score. But if everyone's playing on the same rules, then it's fair.
But it leaves more up to the refs. Like the refs now decide the outcome of the game.
Oh, they do anyway. They do anyway, and I think quite poorly.
Yeah, but it'd make it worse.
I mean, I do think if that is the main flaw, if this was just maybe a hard foul, a bad foul, a foul that could go either way against like the star player, like think if it's Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals and LeBron gets a block, but they accidentally call it, a foul, and LeBron's out for the next 24 seconds. I mean, that would have huge impact on the game.
How is that different from the?
I think a lot of it's these large leagues kind of have to operate like national states do. And the fact that like these policies have to be designed for the kind of general effect and the general reaction of the mainstream and like the middle of the road guy. And a lot of the middle of the road guys, I don't think will appreciate, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't know if they would appreciate the benefit of it enough if there were these certain scenarios where it removed like one of the game's best players from the very end of a game. Especially like, what if it's like a tie game or something?
Well, Jake,
I mean, don't get me wrong, I like the idea. I just think that's a flaw, if there is one.
For clarification, Jacob, is it the penalty is a hard 24-second penalty box, or is it like until the change of possession?
I'm modeling it directly off of NHL rules. If the power play team, I guess the one with 5 players as opposed to 4, if they score, the penalty box is emptied and it's back to 5-on-5.
Right.
That's
so I feel like the worst case scenario for the losing team in both scenarios is that they lose 2 points.
Here's a specific question. So say someone goes to the penalty box, the team that is on the quote unquote power play takes 10 seconds and doesn't score, and then the other team uses up the remaining 14 seconds on their offensive possession. Does the player get to immediately run out of the penalty box, or is it until the next whistle?
Yeah, they get to go right back in. The idea is that you speed up the last 2 minutes of NBA basketball.
Man, what if like LeBron just came off the penalty box and like for a full court alley-oop because everyone forgot he was out there?
It would be an amazing highlight.
I know. I would love the live subbing. Sounds so fun.
Live subbing would be cool. That would be fun.
Yeah, I'm not convinced that that shooting free throws is like. Wait, hold on. Let me start over. I'm not convinced that the penalty box is that much worse of a penalty than shooting free throws. Like, it's, most of the time you're not going to have DeAndre Jordan on the line at the end of a game. Like, when they throw the ball in, they're going to throw the ball into a guard probably, and he's probably a pretty good free throw shooter. The guys that are at the line at the end of games are usually the ones you can trust to put the ball in the hoop at the free throw line. So I feel like if we're doing like an expected points kind of analysis, I'd be interested to see. I don't think you got a better chance of forcing a missed shot 5-on-4. I mean, I guess maybe not in the NBA than a lot of guards with 2 shots at the line.
Yeah. So I think the idea of more about the principle, I think, is the most powerful difference between what I'm proposing and the current rules. In that, sure, maybe the opportunity or the probabilities, they might be really similar, or they might be more to the detriment of the penalizing team. But if a team makes a penalty, it has to be on them to recover, not on the opposing team to fault. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's more about the principle of penalties and what that means in a sport. I just think the NBA has it backwards, and if we do it my way, then all responsibility of a foul is directed onto the team that committed it. They lose probability to win, which is the most important thing, but they also have all of the responsibility of regaining, and at least a possibility of regaining their footing after incurring that penalty. I personally look forward to the flood of affirmation from our listeners because this is one of my greatest ideas.
Well, you've convinced me, Jacob. I'm not a huge NBA fan, but I think that it sounds fun to me, and I haven't watched a single NBA game, I don't know, this whole year, in the past 5 years even. But
rule
sounds
change
good to me.
rule changes do make games more fun to watch. Like when they like change the field goal or the extra points in NFL, like now it's kind of fun to watch the extra point a little more. You know, like I don't know, it just adds something when it's first implemented. So
Agreed.
So you're in, Joe?
Yeah.
no, I think it's not going to work, but I would totally enjoy watching it.
That doesn't
I'll
make
say
any
when
sense. Are you in or are you out?
Yeah, I'll go in.
Okay.
I don't think it would work.
I'm in
I'll say
too.
when they disallowed crotch shots in the UFC, definitely less fun with that rule change.
Oh man, this oppressive, high government UFC rules officiating is ruining the game.
What the heck?
I had some live listeners tell me that they also agree. So
Really?
yeah,
Nice.
a few of my friends are listening. And they said they agree.
Well, good for
Tell
them.
them to type in the chat on YouTube so we can all see it.
Like, comment, subscribe.
Tell them to fuck off.
Hey, don't listen to Chris, man. We're glad you're here.
No, I'm just cranky and tired right now. Sorry, Joe's friends, if you're actually real.
Okay, nice work on that open season argument, Jacob. Let's move on to debate number 1. What is the best way to disincentivize tanking in the NBA? I'll let Jared, how about you describe to our less informed listeners what tanking means for the NBA?
Okay, well, tanking is what teams do. It's a temptation for really bad teams. So the idea is that the worse record you have in the NBA, the higher the probability that you get the best draft picks. And so there's an incentive, if your season is going poorly and you don't have a lot of hope, to just like give up. And it comes from probably the front office, like the GM. The players are probably not quitting. But there's an incentive to kind of quit and get a bad record in hopes of getting a higher draft pick. And I think the problem with tanking is that it's not fun to watch, first of all. Teams just quit and stop trying, and GMs play bad players and that kind of thing, and coaches play bad players. And 2, like going back to principle, like Jacob was in the first segment, it is so not sporting to just quit. And so that's tanking, and that's why I think it's bad. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I will be judging this debate. Each of you will be giving your individual arguments. So let's start out with 30-second to a minute opening statements. Just give me your brief summary of your solution to tanking. And let's start with Joe.
Okay. I was unsure of which thing to go with.
Okay, Joe, we can start with somebody else so you can do your research. Okay, let's start with Chris.
Okay, can I give like a brief overview that's not necessarily detailed, because I think explaining mine will take like about a minute.
You can choose to do what you want with your opening statement. Yeah, just give a 30-second summary.
All right, everybody. I've got a wonderful idea. I wish it were my own. It's not. It was proposed by a graduate student, and I tried to find his name. I can't remember what school from, but some sort of, I think, economics or business graduate student. Long story short, he came up with an idea that maintains the parity structure that the draft is supposed to provide, while simultaneously incentivizing teams to play well throughout the whole season, and potentially adding some fun, action-packed games for even the worst teams in the NBA or other leagues at the very end of the season, when those horribly performing teams are often deep into their tank mode.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to Jacob.
Sure. I am getting this idea from Chad, no last name given, from Champaign-Urbana, Illinois. Reading this off of the really informative 538 article. And he proposes something he calls the lottery playoff. And he claims that And now I claim that the best way to de-incentivize tanking is at the end of the season, you randomly pick 14 teams to play in a playoff, and the top two slots or the top two teams in that tournament get the top 2 draft picks. All other teams get draft picks based on their record of the regular season. And the idea behind it is not only does it equally de-incentivize tanking from or as any other option, but it also offers a really entertaining way to handle a gap between the regular season and the NBA playoffs. So poor teams still have some investment, and fans can still get really involved in a tournament-style format with high octane and really high-weighted important games that can go down to the minute and give some really great sport moments.
Very interesting. How about Jared?
Well, we've all said some similar things so far as what we want our ideas to accomplish, to completely disincentivize tanking, and to make the game more entertaining. And it just so happens that mine does both to a greater extent than all the others. And my answer is called promotion and relegation. And the short idea is that you've got the teams in the NBA, that's the major league, and then you have the minor league or minor leagues. And it goes like this. The worst teams in the NBA are kicked out of the NBA and sent to the minors. And the champions of the minors are promoted to the NBA. And it's clear why it disincentivizes tanking. Well, I'll get into the details later. That's the idea.
All right, Joe.
Man, I could go with the NBA futures, but I'm trying to be a creative person here. So there is an article on 538 that has all these cool ideas, and one of them was probably a pretty good one, but I'm not going to take their idea. Instead, I'm going to take it one step further from Jared's plan. And what we're going to do is have the bottom 3 teams enter a lottery so that whichever one ends up getting drawn from the hat, since they were the worst in the league, or at least one of the 3 worst, they have to give up their highest rated player to free agency. But in turn, they also receive the first round draft pick.
Who rates players?
Well, it'd be a composite score of rebounds and points. And
It's just rebounds. They have to give up their best rebounder. The composite rebounds. Interesting, Joe.
Yeah, that is very interesting. Okay, I'll open up the floor to further explanation or rebuttals so you guys can take over from here.
Actually, before we move on, this didn't have to go into the podcast, but Jared, I cut out. Can you rerun your the Spark Notes by me of your opening statement?
Yeah. The things you want in our ideas are completely disincentivize tanking and make the game of basketball more entertaining, and promotion and relegation. The worst teams in the league get demoted. The worst teams in the majors get demoted to the minors, and the champion or the couple best teams in the minors take their spot in the majors.
Okay. Did you give any specifics about number of teams? Okay.
Nope.
Gotcha.
Okay, so I just said you guys can take over so you can start talking.
All right, I have some clarifying questions I'd like to run by Jared.
Yes.
And Chris's opening statement was so vague. I'll just let him explain when he has a chance. But,
yeah, that was very vague.
Also,
it was
this also applies to
more
Joe.
time.
That was very vague.
Vague.
Jared, how many teams get demoted or promoted?
It could be as many or as few as you like. I'm going to stick with
30.
I'm going to stick with how about 2, the bottom 2, and then the top 2 of the minors.
All right, and then Joe, would you or would you not agree that? Well, this applies to both of you guys. There will come a point where where some teams can evaluate that they have no chance of reaching the bottom 2 slots in their league, and therefore they can tank to their satisfaction.
I'd like to tank to your satisfaction.
No, I don't. I don't concede that.
Okay.
And if Jared doesn't, then I don't.
Package deal.
Well, I don't know.
Why aren't we conceding?
I'm actually more on bated breath, waiting for Chris's actual.
Yeah, let me give my full answer because I wanted to fit it into a more condensed version. So here's the idea from a grad school student that got some popularity, and I thought it was brilliant. And I have very strong rebuttals to all 3 of your proposals. This student's idea was so. All right, back up a little bit. The general reason and idea of a draft is parity, right? It maintains some sort of parity by awarding the worst teams in a league an advantage in the offseason to try to maintain this level of parity. The problem with that is the current format and a lot of formats incentivize teams to manipulate that, and thus we end up with the tanking situation. So every team that misses the playoffs at some point or another is mathematically eliminated from the playoffs because they can't possibly win enough games that would put them into even the lowest spot to go into the playoffs. This guy's proposal was simple yet effective. He says, once you're mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, the team with the most wins gets the top pick and so on. So it provides parity by giving a big advantage to the teams that are mathematically eliminated way early in the season, like the very worst of the worst, say with 25 or 30 games left, as opposed to the teams that are fighting out for a playoff spot and just miss it and are eliminated with a game or 2 left. And so it almost instantaneously creates a switch in this team that is all of a sudden eliminated from the playoffs to play harder throughout the season. You'll also notice that team owners do not charge any less for tickets as the games go on. And so it would provide some action for these fan bases that are still wanting to go to home games. And trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to say. Yeah, it would create some like really exciting late season games for teams that have been out of the playoffs for a while. It doesn't take any big structural changes to the league, which I think is the big flaw with a few of your guys' arguments. There is one singular flaw to this plan, and it's that you would basically be incentivizing some players to play hard so that they can be replaced. But that's basically what's happening on bad teams as it is, because they're bad for a reason. Those bad players or below league average players are going to be replaced one way or another. And the players that are good but on bad teams will either remain on that team or sign with another team.
Chris, is your friend's name Brett Schwab? Because the 538 article has that exact idea submitted by Brett.
I don't know his name. I've never read the articles. I've just heard it discussed before, and I thought it was a great idea.
The Tombstone Date is what
the
they call
Tombstone
it.
Date.
It's a pretty sweet name.
Sweet name for sure.
So you at least have that going for you.
But Chris didn't use that name, so he's not allowed to claim
I've been on a few Tombstone Dates
All right,
myself.
this call.
Hey, let me add some flaws to Chris's
It's
plan.
funny, Jacob.
No, Jared, I said there's only one. You can't.
I heard that, but you are wrong, my friend. And here's another flaw. Sometimes, so in theory, your idea is that the teams that are really the worst get eliminated the earliest, so they have the most chances to win more games and stuff. And you think it's going to even out the right way.
I already know. I love where this is going.
Okay. I don't.
I hope it goes a completely different direction than Jacob was thinking.
Yeah, Jacob's made me really nervous because I'm not.
No, I think I'm going to agree with you a lot.
Anyway, I don't think I am not confident at all that it would go the way you think it would. For example, there have been teams in recent memory that have been so bad that even if eliminated 10 games earlier than any other team, they would drop draft picks because they just wouldn't win the games that you probably would expect them to win in this model.
Exactly.
And so the parity you're going for is going to be affected in a negative way by that. Let me respond to Jacob real quick while I have the floor about his whole everyone else will just still has the incentive to tank or whatever he said. I disagree because tanking is not a fun process for teams or for fan bases. Only the worst teams are going to be incentivized to tank. If you're a middle of the pack team or even like a middle to lower tier team, but you have a chance to compete and maybe make the 8 seed for playoffs, you're going to compete. And it's only the teams that are really in bad shape that are going to tank. And I again cite how bad of an experience it is for fans and teams to go through the tanking process. You're giving up on a season effectively. So there's a big cost associated with it, and the middle of the pack teams would not take that cost on. Only the very worst teams, which would be subject to demotion. Demotion?
Yes.
Yeah. Have that incentive in the first place.
Yeah. And my very quick anti-rebuttal is that there's going to be tons of cases where teams still have 1 to 5 games that they can totally throw in the garbage and end up better for it, which is the opposite of what you said in your opening statement, which was that it would completely de-incentivize tanking.
I would like to defend quickly with the parody with my idea, which is not actually my idea, with Brett,
just Brett
Tombstone. Brett. Yeah, whatever. The parody idea would not be perfect, but it's far from perfect as it is right now. But there would be like a threshold. Like if you're eliminated with 25 games left in the season, you are bound. Like no team has ever gone 0-25 to close out of the season. That team will probably win 5 games. So they're like at a minimum. So they're like their threshold, their floor is probably somewhere like a top 4 or 5 pick, because most teams are mathematically eliminated within the last 3 to 7 games of the regular season. So it's still a huge advantage, and the general energy of parity would still exist very strongly. I have a quick rebuttal to each of your ideas. Jacob and Jared, both of yours require way too much structural change to the league. Jared, your idea is impossible without either having an expansion and adding new teams, or B, somehow convincing current NBA owners to allow their teams to be susceptible to possible demotion. And I just think that none of the owners would ever go for it. It might be a good idea, but it's so far out of the realm of possibility that it just doesn't seem practical enough to me. Jacob, I think your idea is good on paper, but it feels kind of like the like the NIA tournament, and adding a tournament at the end would be a lot of there would be a lot of structural change to that too. There'd have to be negotiations with the Players Association, because players that go and play playoffs get paid more. They get compensated for the extra quote unquote work they're doing. So and also there's not, like you mentioned, a gap. There's really not any gap between the end of the regular season and the NBA playoffs. It's like 2 days maybe. And Joe, what was your idea?
I don't know. You should remember it.
All right, well, it sucks. So
the idea that the worst team in the league is forced to give up their top performing player.
Gosh, so horrible. Like, these teams make long-term investments in these players. It's not like they can just have these players that they've signed to massive multi-million-dollar contracts and that, like, they've just sold a bunch of jerseys to their fans for be exchanged for a #1 draft pick at the end of the year because they couldn't play well enough.
That sounds expensive. Maybe that would incentivize them not to lose.
It is so against both economic and like practical fandom. Like, how about we just like execute the coach under those pretenses? Then,
okay,
of
that's
the
a
worst
big
team.
leap.
It incentivizes.
Chris,
Joe, I have a question for you.
Oh yeah, okay.
Wait. I wasn't recording.
The whole time?
Yeah, until now, I was not recording.
Oh my gosh, Jared.
But I started now. Like, I'll go back and try and fill in the spots or whatever. But
is our live stream on YouTube like recording also?
Yeah.
Okay, so Jared can go back and watch that, and
Yeah, I think that might be the easiest way. It'll be fine. We have it recorded, so don't worry too much.
Dog.
Okay?
all right, good news.
Wait, do we have to redo it?
No.
Yep. No. Let's clap so to resync your audio. You're recording now, right?
Yeah, I'm recording now.
All right. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. All right.
God, episode 23. What a rookie mistake. All right.
Jared gets demoted to the minor leagues.
Hey, good point, Chris.
This is his best
That's a good
player.
point. I deserve it. I was the worst team. I could have tanked, but because I got demoted off of Hostel Discourse and on to whatever other podcast.
Perfectly Odd Cast.
The Perfectly Odd demoted to the Perfectly Odd Cast.
Dude, that's so much shade. Oh my
Oh,
god.
it's so bad.
Hey, but that means the bad news for you guys is that one of the guys from the Perfectly Odd Cast got promoted.
Oh, no.
New member.
No. Jared's sitting in the Sharp Theater podcast studio with two guys he's never met.
All right, whatever. All right, Big D, you about to ask a question.
Yeah, I said, Joe, I have a question for you. So if the bottom 3 teams get randomly put in a lottery and randomly selected to give up their best player, is giving up your best player that bad if you're getting the #1 draft pick, or is that still like a huge deal? Like, I don't know. Is the #1 draft pick gonna be better than their best player? So is that even a negative for them?
I would say that it would depend on the situation, because definitely some of the worst teams don't really have like the superstar, but I mean some of them do, and they still end up not very good.
So those bottom 3 teams in that lottery randomly getting picked, they could want to get picked to get rid of their best player if they're gonna get somebody else that's better.
Well, no, because you're talking about a person who is consistently performing well, the best player on your team, traded for a guy coming straight out of college who you don't know much how he's going to perform in the NBA. I mean, I guess it's possible that he could come in and just play lights out, but chances are you would be downgrading slightly.
Okay. And Jared, I have a question for you.
Yep.
So currently there's no minor league, right, to the NBA. So that's a whole new league that you're wanting to create?
There is a minor league, actually.
Perfect solution, Big D. Absolutely perfect solution. And I'm actually amending one of my arguments from a previous podcast. But eliminate college sports and all the college athletes that were good enough to play college but weren't quite good enough to go pro yet. They are the minor league, and so.
Dang, dude, I'm so excited for the Duke Blue Devils to win the NBA championship.
Yeah, exactly.
That is
And let me say this while I have the floor. I'm afraid I'm afraid I have understated the entertainment value of my idea. Okay. This idea makes every single NBA game more entertaining. Specifically, it makes every single NBA game much more dramatic. You've got who's really bad this year? Maybe the Nets or somebody. Like, you got two terrible teams playing against each other, right? No one wants to watch that game. Wait, yes, you do, because of the drama, the implications. One of these teams, they're competing for survival in the league.
Jared, I'll take a shot at yours.
Joe, yours is mine. Don't take it. You're taking a shot at yours.
No, mine is a better version of yours. Yours, the problem is that you're sending two teams to the minor leagues where they will basically be kind of worthless for a year and replacing them with a team that's going to get destroyed that year. So you're kind of putting them on a cycle where the minor league team is going to get replaced the next year by the team that just got kicked out of the NBA because they're going to be better than the minor league teams. And they're not going to be any better when they return to the NBA. So wouldn't they just keep losing on an endless cycle? And if they keep losing, the players on that team that are actually good will give up their contracts, not return, making that team even worse.
Cleveland Browns, case in point.
It's a spiral.
Interesting point. Well,
yeah, it's like the Browns versus the Alabama argument.
Let me
would get crushed.
Let me say this, okay? This idea is not untested. Okay, it's untested in basketball, but professional soccer in Europe, they have this system in place. And another great thing about the system, so that point is to say that it's not a death spiral that wouldn't work. Like, it works already in soccer. And I forget what I was going to say.
Cool.
All right, it's definitely proven to work, but my question is just the feasibility. Where are these teams going to come from?
I've answered that. The teams come from the college players that don't have college teams to play for anymore.
So those college players are just going to build their own NBA arena and all of a sudden have like an NBA able hosting arena?
Absolutely not. But as soon as college sports don't exist, the market for the minor league basketball, it will happen. Like that.
It's just like the idea works. Like I like the Premier League and I like how it works there, but it's just too far out of the realm of realism in modern American sports.
It's a much longer shot than yours. I concede that, but it is a much better solution and it's a more ideal fix. So that's the trade-off. And if we're picking what truly is the best way to combat tanking, I would take the ideal solution over the practicality.
I'm going to go with execution of head coach then.
I think it's a great statement, Jared, and I'd like to squeeze one thing in before we go into final statements. I think that's what the plan is, right, David?
Yeah, why don't you squeeze this in and then transition into your final statement?
Sure, yeah. So Chris mentioned that there isn't a gap between regular season and playoffs. What I didn't mention in my opening statements, didn't have time, was that the idea, as you could read in this 538 article, is that you put about a week in between regular season and playoffs to give the playoff teams enough time to practice. Not enough time, but added time to practice. They'll be better. The playoffs will then be better. But then you also have time for this tournament. So I didn't mean to sound like I was just making up a gap between those two. For my final statement, I'll say this. Chris, I think, is overestimating the logistical challenge of my option. If anything, it's huge incentive for the teams because they're getting more time on the air. There's going to be a lot more money generated from commercials for this tournament. And you're also going to get a lot more fan involvement for these teams that didn't have much going on during that last part of the regular season. And for Jared, I'll agree with Chris that his idea is a massive undertaking. I really wanted to keep this argument so really theoretical and more on principle, but what Jared is offering is just so far off the actual possibilities of and logistics of a sports league.
Oh my gosh!
For Joe's argument, it has it shares an issue with Jared in that what's going to happen is you're going to have teams really just border on that line between they're just going to stay on that that lower tier and never really move up like we want them to. My argument offers an opportunity for two teams to really rise above out of all the teams that don't make the playoffs, and so you still maintain the parity that the regular draft process offers, but the idea is you aren't guaranteed that best spot if you tank. You could still possibly get the third, at worst, third draft pick, which is not something you really want to be tanking for. So I think my idea effectively eliminates the need to tank while offering a lot more sports entertainment and investment for the fans, which I think is the most important thing.
Okay, next final statement. Let's go with Chris.
I agree with Jacob. Jared and Joe's ideas, as effective as they might be as far as incentivization, are just so far outside of the realm of possibility and a realistic sense of modern day sports that they're not practical enough to win this argument. Jacob and I have similar ideas. The pros of my idea versus his are, mine is immediately available for installation. You could snap your fingers and it'd be ready to go next year. I think it actually does a better job of providing parity because it's a lot bigger of an advantage for a team that's been eliminated with 25 games left to win maybe 5 or 6 games, as opposed to bringing it down to 1 game or 2 games at the very end of the season, which is, between 2 bad teams, not much different than the current picking a lottery ball out of a big ball spinner thing, whatever those are. And at the same time, I don't think my idea would subtract any excitement. There would still be all these scenarios, and they would be throughout every team that has been mathematically eliminated, because they'd be jockeying for positions at the very end of the season, and 1 win at the end of the season could move you from 8th to 7th, or it can move you from 2nd to 1st. And that would be exciting for fan bases. They would come out and cheer and watch, and teams would have a reason to play hard.
Great. Joe, give us your final statement.
I'll add one more thing to the burning heap of trash that is Chris's argument, in that I just feel like what you're doing is moving the tanking period from the end of the season to slightly before the end of the season.
Exactly. Because
now you're going to have teams who know they're not going to make the playoffs eventually, and they're going to say, well, we could either try really hard to make the playoffs these next however many games, or the deadline for getting kicked out of playoff contention is coming up. Why don't we just tank the next 5 games, get there, and then we'll have a better shot at winning the most games in the period following that. For my own argument, it is similar to Jared's, mostly because I wanted to argue what Jared was arguing, but now that I've heard him argue it, it is stupid, and I'm glad I didn't pick it. Mine is better because it doesn't condemn a team to this borderline where they're going to be terrible forever. You at least reward them a little bit by giving them the #1 draft pick. With Jared's, all they do is get sent to the minor leagues. They don't have any benefit from it in the long term, and they'll stay bad. Mine, at least they have the potential to get better.
Great. Jared, you are last.
Okay. Well, I would like to just emphasize what Joe said about Chris's. It's actually not that effective at disincentivizing tanking. It just shifts the time in which tanking is incentivized. As far as Chris's arguments against me, let me back up. Chris is saying that his is exciting because teams are jockeying for draft picks, and they could get the 7th pick, they could get the 5th pick. I mean, draft picks, that's kind of exciting. That's not the most exciting thing ever. In my system, teams are jockeying for survival in the league. That is dramatic. That is more entertaining. It's way more entertaining than jockeying for draft picks. And as far as disincentivizing tanking, I think for the most part, all of our arguments are similar. I think they would do, with the exception of my criticism against Chris and Joe's criticism. I think each would disincentivize tanking well. So it comes down to the other factor of what makes this good, and that's entertainment value. And having a whole nother league whose games matter to the majors, and having the worst teams' games matter to the majors increases the drama and entertainment value significantly more than any other, making mine the best way to combat tanking.
Great. Great arguments, everybody. I'll admit I'm not the most educated on this topic or the NBA in general, but I'll do my best to pick fairly the debate winners. Starting in fourth place, Joe, I'm going to have to give you fourth.
I disagree, but accept it.
Yeah.
You don't agree, Joe?
What?
You sure you don't agree?
I don't.
Right.
You didn't have that much behind it. I felt like the other three were just more fleshed out. And so from that angle, I think that I have to give you fourth. In third place, one sec.
Jared, I'm not going to lie. I didn't listen to your final statements, but I never do unless I'm judging, in which case I don't listen to any of your argument. I just want you to know that.
Wow, Joe. Well, we finally found one thing we have in common.
Jacob, Joe got fourth.
Yeah.
Okay.
But don't act like you knew it was me. It was a surprise.
In third place, Jared. And I'm giving you third because, I mean, all the arguments against you, how it's just not really possible. And I think the best way to disincentivize tanking really has to be something that could actually be implemented. And yours does sound really exciting, but I just don't think that it's ever going to happen or be possible. And people touched on that. So that's why I'm giving you third. But I did like it, and I think it would be fun to have a minor league where teams get kicked out. So,
well, look, I understand, and I think that's a fair judgment. I was pretty scattered on this one, I felt like. But, man, it would be fun.
And that brings... and that leaves Chris and Jacob. So both of these debates are implementable, I think. They both could be put in. For Jacobs, you'd have to put a week in between the regular season and the playoffs, but I think that's definitely doable. Chris, I think that, as you said, this could be implemented immediately, which is a bonus for you. But I will have to give first place to Jacob.
Oh, no way! I got one. It's been a while, guys.
I thought that this is something that sounded fun and entertaining, but also realistic. And I think that it would disincentivize tanking. And honestly, Chris, I didn't understand yours completely because I'm not exactly sure how the draft works currently in the NBA.
You should have asked clarifying questions.
I know. But I'm giving the win to Jacob. I think that the entertainment value of your choice is what gave you the win and made it the best way.
Well, thank you, Judge.
Okay, let's move on to debate number 2. We got some social media responses for this one, and the question is, debate number 2. Okay, who is the greatest basketball player of all time? So just on the live chat from T Money, I'm guessing that's Thomas Shore. He said Wilt Chamberlain, GOAT.
God damn it.
On Instagram, Carter Jameson, Lonzo Ball. Jeremiah Neely said Joanna Mann. Chris.
We got some trolls out there.
Chris commented King James. Thomas Kerwin said Dirk Nowitzki, but unironically. Brett Stewart said Russ.
Not one mention of Michael Jordan.
Tyler Moravicek, Pablo Sanchez, best multi-sport athlete of all time.
That I want to clarify. That is Tyler Moravec.
Oh, thank you.
He's a
and Dan Leibel. Dan Leibel, Air Bud is the best of all time. So let's
Pablo
get
Sanchez
into.
is such a baller.
So let's stop interrupting, please, and get into. Thank you. Let's get into the debate.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I'll tell you, I topped out on my audio earlier, and I had to stop and restart my recording, so we'll just need to reclap.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say something like, I topped out of my audio, and could you just say one more time who won again?
All right. Everyone's recording. Just make sure. Okay.
Check.
Right.
Check.
3,
okay.
2, 1. 3, 2, 1. Danny, stop.
What a troll.
We got a troll in the house.
Danny, the ultimate troll.
Classic.
3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. Okay, hopefully that's the last clapping.
Thank you.
Technical difficulties.
So let's get into the arguments. Let's start off with opening statements. 30 seconds. Let's start with the winner, Jacob. Who's the GOAT in the NBA?
The GOAT of all time.
Hey, I was going to say that.
It's LeBron James. And here's why. There is
Wait, sorry. I forgot to say that it's teams. And who are the teams?
It's me and Chris Fisher.
It's Jacob and me.
What? No.
Wait, what is it?
It's me and Chris.
Okay. Now let's get into the arguments. This is a 2v2 debate. Jacob and Chris arguing for LeBron, and Jared and Joe are arguing for Michael Jordan. So let's start with Jacob and Chris, opening statements.
All right. The GOAT of all time, that's right, is LeBron James. And it's, for me, simply because there is no athlete from 20 years ago and later that is a better athlete than one in a professional level now. And this holds true across all sports, and I'm so confident that at their best, LeBron would beat MJ 1v1 at least 8 out of 10 times. I'll pass it over to Chris.
Damn. I love the confidence.
Oh, you fool. Oh, Chris, you better disagree with that.
I would never publicly disagree with my teammate. And LeBron is the better all-around player. That's all I have to say right now.
Wow, solid argument.
Wow.
That's opening statements. I'm not trying to take up a lot of time, bro.
Okay, Jared or Joe, you can start.
Jared, I defer to your wisdom.
Okay, I'll just start us off, and then you come in like the teammates we are.
Yeah, I'll give him the finishing blow.
There you go. Okay.
Okay.
You guys have a fundamental and damning misunderstanding of the word.
We're gonna bleep.
Preach.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Of the word great. You guys argued as if the question was, who is the best player of all time? When in fact, that is not the question. And greatness and skill, which is how you might measure who's the best, like playing one-on-one, are very different things. Greatness includes skill on the basketball court, how good you are at basketball, but it goes much further, like cultural impact, legend around your name, things like this. And so it's the sum of how good you are at basketball and how good and the off court, impact, if you will, that makes up greatness. And you guys are just arguing for best.
And let me tell you, when it comes to those criteria, nobody meets those criteria like your boy, Michael Jordan. The man, the myth, the legend, the famous, the infamous Michael J. That's all.
Just gonna repeat
Michael
his
J.
name.
MJ.
Argument.
I'm just using subliminal name dropping to convince him.
Well, I always get a little exhausted when any of these arguments on this show boil down to semantical definitions of a certain word or phrase.
I'm with you.
I thought we were going to talk mostly basketball. That being said, if your definition includes off-the-court impact, Michael Jordan would not have survived in today's era because he did a whole lot of questionable things off the court. He would have had a Tiger Woods moment where he was caught doing some nasty stuff. He sure as hell had some huge gambling problems, and overall would have been an off the court horrible role model and brought a lot of negative light to the game. LeBron James, we can sit here and talk statistical comparisons and basketball all you want, but at the end of the day, I think we all agree that Michael Jordan and LeBron James are at absolute worst 2 of the top 5 players to ever play basketball. But if you want to go off the court stuff, LeBron's impact off the court is incredibly great. He's got all these cool charities set up. Literally every kid in Akron that is underprivileged and wants to go to college, LeBron pays for through his foundation. The dude is the athlete of our generation, worth $1 billion, and has really stayed out of trouble, which is unprecedented these days. He's been with the same woman, not that that really matters, but since he's been in high school, hasn't gotten in trouble with the law, and has set up a ton of really great charitable acts and been a very good role model for a lot of people.
Yeah, and I think when you talk about cultural impact for MJ, it just comes to his shoes, which I think is quite less substantial than what Chris just brought forward. The other thing is, it's a totally unfair comparison when you're looking at a guy who retired 20 years ago. He's got way more time off the court to develop his brand than LeBron has had. So I think on basis and by principle, that is an unfair argument to bring to this conversation because it's not a fair assessment of the 2 players as players, which is what we are talking about. The prompt phrase is, who is the greatest basketball player of all time? But even if you want to bring it into consideration, Chris brings forward some really great arguments for why LeBron is a better off-court and cultural force than MJ was.
Okay. Joe, you want to jump in, or should I jump in?
I'll jump in with a quick few things. Number 1, Michael Jordan participates in 14 charities, including Boys and Girls Club of America, the Jackie Robinson Foundation, the James R. Jordan Kids Wish Network, etc. Very
I'd like to hear all of that, please.
Etc.
And as for the off-court thing, don't compare him to Tiger Woods. He didn't have a marital prostitution ring issue. He had a slight gambling involvement.
That is insane.
What, he didn't?
To call it a prostitution ring?
Well, whatever Tiger Woods was.
Okay, we're not talking about Tiger right now, Jim.
Yeah.
Well, no,
Yeah, you don't.
And on that note,
information.
Tiger
We
and
only
Charles
do
Barkley.
speculation.
Tiger and Charles Barkley and Michael Jordan hung out all the time at nightclubs and strip clubs.
That is true. That is
That's
true.
a cool crew.
And Michael Jordan got divorced. It just wasn't public.
Hey, all right. Let me jump back in here. I got a few things. First of all, Jacob, I'm having a hard time taking your last point seriously about it's unfair because they're from different eras, so that kind of thing. Your opening statement was one is better because he's from a different era. Like, I think you accusing me of being unfair for that reason backfires pretty hard. Now, let's go back to what I was saying about greatness. It wasn't about how good of a person you are, right? It's about impact. So, like, LeBron is, by all means, I mean, by all accounts, he's a great role model. But here's what's true about MJ. He was the first one to make basketball, like, so cool. Okay, he was the superstar of basketball. And go back to what I said about your legend, right? When we're comparing how good somebody is at basketball, an individual player, I think all of us, from our past conversations, if I remember right, would say that championships have no place in that argument. Or at the very least, like a very minimal, or at the most, a minimal place in the argument, because they speak to a team accomplishment and not how good an individual player is, right? But when we're talking about greatness and legend and the aura around this person, this is where we get into things like Michael, 6-0 in finals. He never lost. If he went to the finals, he won. That doesn't make him a better basketball player than LeBron, but it adds to this legend of his, like, and maybe you've heard of people of saying, like, LeBron is kind of chasing MJ's ghost, right? He may very well be a better basketball player as far as does he contribute to his team winning more than MJ. But MJ is such a great cultural figure, and Jacob, you discounting the Jordan brand, I think you discounted it way too much. Jordan brand is massive. It's a huge deal. I'm kind of rambling now. Joe, you got anything to add?
Yeah, I would like to add that I just looked up a fun fact for you. The total jersey sales in America right now, based on the name of the person on the jersey, LeBron James isn't even number 1. He's number 2 behind Steph Curry. Kids today don't grow up thinking, man, I want to be like LeBron. They grow up thinking, man, I want to hit three-pointers like Steph Curry.
Oh, man, that makes my heart happy.
He doesn't even get the most impact today out of all the NBA players.
That's a little off base because LeBron has been doing this for like 15-plus years here. He topped jersey sales the majority of those years. And it's not like Michael Jordan was outselling Kobe Bryant when he was playing for the Wizards. You know.
Also, Joe, tell us where Michael Jordan is on that list.
Well, that's funny. You should say that also, because in 2010, guess who was at the top of the list? Michael Jordan, even though he hadn't been playing in the NBA for about 10 years. And LeBron James was only number 4 with Kobe Bryant second. So
that was, in fairness, that was prime LeBron James jersey burning season. So it wasn't necessarily time to buy jerseys.
Yeah, this is very opportunistic evidence.
I'd say that was at the peak of his.
Where's MJ on the current list?
He's not there because he's been out of the league for like 20 years.
Okay.
So that brings up the biggest
even
issue.
7 years ago, he wasn't.
Are jersey sales an indicator of cultural impact or not?
They are slightly, yes. My other point that I would like to bring up is that Jared and I both agreed on this, that we don't like to look at the idea of championships in the setting of who is the best basketball player of all time, because we don't think that really reflects their skills necessarily. It's more on the team around them. But did you not agree with me on this?
No, I do. But go ahead. Maybe you're going somewhere else.
But what we did agree on was, I think, and maybe not, is that when you're talking about the greatest of all time, championships do matter.
What the heck? I just gave this argument.
I zoned out for a second. I'm sorry.
You were looking up your fun facts, but hey,
I was. They were fun facts.
Joe, you are the Sherlock Holmes of this podcast, so you keep it up, all right?
Without a doubt, the worst
innovator
I've ever heard of.
We should have known that teaming up Jared and Joe on the same team would not go good places.
That's a good point.
I think this is kind of funny, and I'm actually refreshed. People that listen to this might be like a little bit like, why are these guys not talking more about basketball? But I think we've all, as friends, like had some form of this debate so much for like the last 5 years that we're like ready to kind of push into new boundaries, which is kind of enjoyable. But if we bring it back to the basics, It sounds to me like you guys were even beginning to give way to the fact that LeBron James may be the better basketball player, which is what I was expecting this conversation to be more of. They're both so good. I'm not going to try to convince the audience that one is better than the other. I think LeBron is by far a better playmaker and teammate, passer, better defender, and more efficient scorer. Not necessarily a better scorer. But on top of that, as far as just some career numbers, LeBron James he's going to end up in some rarefied air that we may never see again. It's just as far as like total tallies. He's on pace to be top 5 in points, assists, and steals, kind of all facets of the game. He'll probably be top 20 to top 10 in rebounds by the end of his career. And there's no one that's even close to that. The guys that are top 5 in assists are all small point guards. Michael Jordan, I don't think he's even on the list of top 25 in assists. But LeBron, as it is right now, is already number 12. Total points in the league, LeBron is already number 7, and Michael is number 4. I'm not saying that these should necessarily be the heavily weighted stats to look at, but it's just an interesting perspective. And it ultimately kind of sheds light on the fact that this is a really hard argument to have right now, because we're comparing one guy who has completed his career over a decade ago and one guy who is still very much in the prime of it, on the back end of the prime. But who knows what LeBron will do? He could tear his ACL and never play again, or he could win 4 championships and 3 MVPs from here on out.
But it is worth noting that as of recently, they have now played officially the same amount of games at 1,072 apiece. So LeBron has now played 1,076, so he's 4 games over. But in those 1,072 games, Michael Jordan had 3,000 more points. He had 1,000 more steals, and he also had about 60 more blocks. So there's some more stats in favor of LeBron or Jordan if we want to go that way.
Yeah. I think every NBA expert would say LeBron is a better defender. Blocks and steals are a pretty good kind of conglomerate statistic, but LeBron gets so much credit for being able to guard any position.
What do you want to say, Jared?
And on top of that, LeBron usually defends the toughest opponent. Scottie Pippen defended the toughest opponent when MJ played.
I would like to say that, so just to cover all of our bases, they're talking about, now we're getting into who's the better basketball player. And people have won debates on this podcast before by citing all-encompassing statistics. There is one for basketball. It's called player efficiency rating. And it just so happens that Michael Jordan has the highest player efficiency rating of any basketball player to ever play the game. Second, it's worth noting, is LeBron James. But sadly, this is about who's the best. Actually, about who's the greatest. But even if you measure it by contribution on the court only, by the best objective measure we have, which is player efficiency rating, Michael's the best. And Chris, I would definitely disagree with your comment about defense. It's true that LeBron can guard more positions, but I think a great proxy for defensive dominance in their time is selections to the NBA all-defensive team. And LeBron has made the all-defensive team 6 times. I don't have the numbers on the breakdown. I think that must be first team all-defensive. MJ has tied for the highest number of defensive all-NBA team selections of all time at 9. And he also has 1 year where he was selected as the defensive player of the year. In other words, the best defender in the league. So let me go back real quick to player efficiency rating. Its biggest deficiency is that it doesn't measure defense well. And by the numbers I just gave, I think it's safe to say Michael is the better defender. And so, if anything, that separates them even more.
The NBA defensive team that you mentioned, is that something that's been exactly the same over the times that MJ has played compared to LeBron, or has that team selection changed at all, or has that always been the same?
No, I'm not the same, but for the most part, it's selected by, I think, coaches or players. I don't know, or maybe the media. I would love to go back to player efficiency rating. Is an all-encompassing stat great? No. Is the idea of it great? Yes. Because player efficiency rating is so flawed as far as a stat, and I would like the judge and the audience to discount that as far as any really certification on who is better. Jared, do you know who Neil Johnston is?
Neil Johnston. He's a statistician.
Nope. According to your stat, he is the ninth best player of all time.
He's the what?
Ninth best basketball player of all time. He is ninth in career player efficiency rating. You're also willing to say that Bob Pettit is the seventh best player of all time, that Chris Paul, a good player, very good player right now, is the sixth best player of all time, much better than the likes of Magic Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, or Larry Bird. I mean, the stat is fun. The idea of it is cool, and I think there's a certain benefit to it. But compared to other encompassing stats across the board, like wins above replacement, it doesn't really have any credibility. And I think by the fact that an avid basketball fan such as yourself doesn't know two of the guys in the top 10 of what this says the best players of all time are, it's just not a good measure.
Yeah, I think a big problem with here's where comparing eras is really a problem, is when it comes to advanced stats like this, because the guys from the 50s and 60s, there are lots of problems with calculating advanced stats on them, and so you're going to get some weird ones like that. But I would ask you, I mean, it's probably not a good time to do this on this podcast, but I would ask you to prove to me that the players don't belong on that list. It comes down to your opinion, your eye test, versus a more objective measure. And in the research I've done about player efficiency rating, by far its biggest flaw is it just doesn't account for defense very well, for how good of a defender you are. So someone can be not very good at offense, but they can be known as someone who kind of locks down the ball on defense and plays really good defense, but maybe just forces tough shots, but that doesn't show up in the box score, right? And so on PER, they don't show up as a very good player when in fact they are. And I've already talked about how defense falls in Michael's favor.
I find it interesting that Chris would want to discount PER, even though it's the only metric we've really given so far, and his argument revolves mostly around his own subjective opinions of LeBron James' defense and obscure references to experts which he didn't really cite. And also, Neil Johnston played in the 1950s, so unless there's a 70-year-old on this podcast or older, I don't think we really would have watched him play regardless.
Not watching him play, Bill Russell played in the 1950s. Everyone knows who Bill Russell is. But Neil Johnston is apparently better than Bill Russell according to PER.
Maybe he was.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, okay, then I can't prove it to you. I can't prove that you're wrong. But you could ask 100 NBA historians, and 100 out of 100 would say Neil Johnston and Bob Pettit are not top 10 players of all time.
Right. And so that goes back to the problems with measuring players from the 50s and the 60s, where stat keeping was so far behind where it is now. Like many stats like steals and blocks weren't even kept then. So it becomes very, very hard to judge the old players like that. But within the modern era of the NBA, it is a much, much more reliable stat. So, yeah, I grant you that Neil and Bob, you know, maybe they don't belong, maybe they do belong. It's really hard to know because we don't have the same standards back then as we do now. But now in the modern
I think it's
era,
really easy to know they don't belong. Like everyone knows they don't belong. No shots to these guys, but it's just not a good stat for comparison. And I think it's very obviously not a good stat. There are better all-encompassing stats that I am refusing to mention because they also say Michael Jordan is better. But this one is just a garbage stat as far as comparing players' all-time effectiveness.
Judge, please submit into evidence that our opposition thinks that all good encompassing stats, at least all that he's seen, point to Michael Jordan as the best player ever.
That's putting words into my mouth. I said there are others.
Okay, I will not remember that statement. Goodbye from memory. Okay, let's get into final statements. So I'll give Jared and Joe a minute to convince me of their argument.
Joe, you can take it, dog.
You know me. I can do the first half. You want the second half?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. Look, Michael Jordan carries more weight. It's up for debate whether one was better than the other based on late statistics or variables, but Michael Jordan does carry more weight. He has the entire Jumpman, Air Jordan logo brand behind him, the tongue-out basketball play, everything that you think of when you think of Michael Jordan is it sticks in your mind more than it does with LeBron. And he has all these championships behind him, which carry weight in the greatness argument, as we've now said twice on this podcast. Overall, he's just the bigger icon, which makes him the greater of all time.
Very good, Joe. Yeah, you like your historians, Chris. 100 out of 100 historians would say that LeBron. Oh man, I messed that up. Would say that MJ is the most iconic player of all time. Undefeated championships, Space Jam. These are all cultural influence. The Jumpman logo is recognizable and iconic. There's almost no doubt, especially if you want to go by this historians thing, that he has the greater legend, okay? And if nothing else, it is so blurred as to who's the better basketball player that you must defer to greatness. But I think we've even proven that Michael should be considered the better basketball player too. So on all bases, we're covered.
All right, thank you. Let's go over to Team LeBron. Final statements, please.
Yeah, I'll just briefly. I mean, I feel like you guys are just pigeonholing this debate. You're forcing your own definition of greatness, and now it's become who's the most iconic, and that's not really what the discussion is about. I don't think it's really all that great to be comparing Michael Jordan's business success with Nike as to why he is the greatest of all time, even though that's one of the foundations of your argument. I'll agree that they're both like incredibly close as far as talent and value to a team on the court. And off the court, Jacob mentioned it earlier. I mean, Michael has had 20 plus years to be in the booming shoe industry and get his name out there. So he's had a huge time advantage. And he's also had and it's silly for us to be talking about this because it's just getting down into just such a tangent. But he's also had an advantage of not being seen, because had he been around in the social media era, he would not have survived. Like he would have, I am very confident he would have had some sort of time away from the game like he did when he played baseball, but for reasons that were forced by his shady behavior off the court. It's just too hard to compare when someone is still playing and still in their prime of their game to someone who has been growing a brand for a long time.
Yes, I will totally agree with what my teammate says. I'll also say great athletes only become remembered more fondly as years go on. So in 10 years, it will be fair for us to debate who is the greatest, given we assess Michael Jordan at his time right now. But I'll say it's fair for us to assess their basketball playing because they have both played the same amount of basketball. it is not fair to assess their business successes and their cultural impact because they have not had the same amount of cultural exposure.
Yeah, but
that entire idea is unfair and not valid in a logical argument.
But 10 years from now, it won't be the 23rd episode of Hostel Discourse, so we have to argue it now.
That is a good point.
It could be 230.
Ooh.
2030.
Yeah, 2,323.
Whoa.
Okay,
Or
great argument.
23 to the 23rd power.
I have made my decision. I'll first give my reasoning. Doesn't really make sense. I'll say my decision, then give my reasoning. So I won't be able to keep it a secret in giving my reasoning. The winner for this debate was Team Michael Jordan, Joe and Jared.
Hooray!
I think that's fair.
I think it was pretty clear that they dominated this debate. It kind of switched around from being about off the court to on the court, but really it was about all of the above. And I mean, I agree with you, Jacob, that it might not be fair to judge the off the court aspects because LeBron is still because MJ has had more time to develop his brand. There's been a lot more time passing and everything. But even scratching all the off the court stuff, which I think MJ has done more of and has been greater at, the on the court stuff, I felt like Jared and Joe really proved through all the stats that they gave.
You were supposed to
talk about how LeBron was a better defensive player, but they had actual facts of him that he could potentially be a better defensive player because of all the times he was picked to be on the defensive teams and everything like that. So I felt like in all aspects, on and off the court, they gave more evidence that MJ was a better basketball player and greater on and off the court. So that's why I give you guys the win.
Oh, wow. Very wise, Big D.
Thank
Very
you.
wise.
A rare winning alliance with Jared and I.
Yeah.
What were you
A
going to say,
rare
Chris?
team up.
Win.
You had something during David's explanation.
No, you didn't
Something
win.
about
You
stats.
lost.
Oh, I said he was supposed to forget the garbage stats. No, Michael Jordan's the greatest of all time. I'm
Yeah.
just
I do
someone
agree.
could argue against it. It's a hard case to make.
Yeah, I agree, and I actually feel pretty good that there is an athlete from over 10 years ago that we can still consider to be the greatest.
Unlike Tiger.
Tiger is definitely the greatest.
And there's still more
Right.
Tiger to watch.
Yeah,
Oh,
Tiger's-
baby.
No, Tiger's done. I hate to say it. I don't even hate to say it that much, but he done.
He's not even going to make the cut.
How is he done? He's set
know,
to
there's
play
the
this month.
Okay, congrats on
Oh, wait,
tonight's
we didn't-
debate winners.
We
What?
didn't mention at all that I just saw LeBron.
Oh,
That's true.
That's all right. We really don't have time. It's too long, Anthony.
Just replace it with the second debate.
For our second debate, Chris will tell us about his experience watching LeBron.
Well, first,
Chris,
I drank
how
a
about-
lot of beer.
Chris.
Oh, dang
No,
it, Chris! I owe you
dude.
$10.
It'll be Chris.
Oh, yeah.
It'll be the Hostel Discourse after our discussion after the normal podcast. Because if you watch live, you have the bonus discussions afterwards. You
Ooh.
know. Okay. But let me wrap this up. Okay, congrats to all of tonight's debate winners. Jacob on the first one, Joe and Jared on the second. Nice job, everybody. So,
Chris sucks.
one thing I wanted to mention, the University of Tulsa's Collegian newspaper wrote a raving article about the podcast. They put us on the same list in the head of the article was top podcasts for entertainment and education. So we are on the same list as This American Life, which is a big honor for the show. So thank you to the kind folks at the Collegian for writing that about us. It'll be in this month's issue of the newspaper. Remember to leave a review and rating on iTunes. It'll really help out the show, and we will keep an eye out for those and read the most creative one on each episode. And follow us on all other social media. That would be Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And keep an eye out for the live episodes. We should be doing it every week. We've got some chat activity from tonight. It was pretty fun seeing that a few people talked about how MJ is the GOAT, so they agreed with my decision. And keep an eye out for next episode. Every other week is the schedule. So we will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
So long.
You did it! Oh, so
You
long.
stole his catchphrase.
Is that Jared's catchphrase?
Yeah.
It is.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You
I take
dunce.
it back. I take it back.
No, it's
I
okay.
thought you did it on purpose.
All right,
I
so
was
you can
honestly reading other things.
stop your audio recording and save it. So, because we don't need that for the YouTube, the live thing. Just name it your name, episode 23. That'll make it easiest for me.
Dang it, dude! I cannot believe that I didn't have my recording going.
Yeah, that sucks.
You a nincompoop.
I hope you find your peace. Hey, but let me be clear about everything. I do think LeBron is the best basketball player of all time. In other words, the BOAT.
The boat, but not the
You
goat.
should have said that on the podcast. That's funny.
Dang it! I meant to. I even said that in the group text that I wanted to talk about GOAT versus BOAT, but I forgot to.
Chris, you should tell us about your Monday night NBA game. First one at the Garden.
Yeah. So obviously the game was great. I don't know if you guys saw highlights. It got a lot of attention. But man, the Garden is special. I've done like a decent amount of sports thing in my life. Not like a huge sports venue person or anything. Haven't been to a ton of iconic places, but like, have you guys been to like a Broadway show or one of those classic like massive theaters that go like really vertical and have like the side seating and stuff?
Yeah.
Duh.
So the Garden has like a feel like a theater. It's like, it's not your typical arena. It feels old but like classy, not like old and gross. The ceiling is this kind of like goldish tan, and it just feels like this theater, and it's just so magical. And you can see like all the jerseys on the wall and all the special moments that have happened there. I don't know. It was just like, I loved it. Excited to go back.
So your seats were behind one of the baskets I saw.
Yeah, that was the other thing. So got great seats because the Madison Square Garden is super expensive as it is. Like, the cheapest tickets you can get to a Knicks game are like $60, and the worst seats and like a Rangers game is like $100. But like when the premier teams come in, they charge a lot more. So like I was about to buy online tickets that would have been like upper deck for, I don't know, like $140 each, and I was pretty stoked about it. And then my work has this like kind of like a Craigslist but for work, and I just post on it like wanting Knicks tickets for tonight, and some guy like I don't know, it seemed kind of sketchy, but his wife gets like tickets to every game, and they're in the lower bowl, which were going on online for like at minimum like $220 a pop, and he gave them to me for $100.
Wow.
Dang,
So
that's
you were
awesome,
just
dude.
by yourself?
I went with Emily, my friend.
Whoa.
Ooh,
She
I know
was-
her.
Whoa, girl.
Oh yeah, Jared knows her.
Girl, that's not your wife. Whoa.
Whoa.
I tried to get my wife to go.
Dude, that's awesome, Chris.
Yeah.
Man, Chris Stapps really effed up. He shot so bad.
Yeah, well, he got in foul trouble early too.
Oh, man. I felt pretty good about that bet, although I think it was a fair bet.
Yeah, I mean, I would have taken Kristaps too, but it's pretty fair. It's pretty fair.
You didn't, and now.
All right, well, I got to go. So, Joe, good win. You dodged a bullet. I almost sank the ship so that you would sink with it.
I know.
but I did not. Jacob,
you did your part.
it has been a
Friend.
pleasure, my friend. Your wit and wisdom astounds me every day. Chris,
Yes.
I enjoy your shiny head,
Thank you.
and your friendship is more valuable to me than all of my material possessions combined. Big
Oh
D,
my gosh.
your justice in the courtroom, when you bang that gavel, you leave no doubt. And God damn it, do I respect you for it. So long, friends.
Wait, Jared, don't leave yet.
Tank.
So I'm gonna listen to the YouTube recording and see if we can use that audio for you.
Okay.
I'm not sure how clear it's gonna be or what, but I'll let you know if you need to re-record the first half. Okay?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Do you know when it'll be available to view?
I mean, since we usually record on Monday night and I release it on Friday, it's gonna be hard for me to finish all the editing
Oh, but
and
the
get it out
YouTube video.
by Friday. Oh, the YouTube video is posted immediately.
Really?
Yeah.
Damn.
Yep. I hit stop broadcast and it posts it. Yeah. So
And
I don't know.
all right, I'm out. So long, friends.
Okay. Bye.
So long.
Bye. Jacob, I feel like your tombstone date concept or joke was funny and no one recognized it.
Yeah.
What was the
I
joke?
appreciate that. I said like I've had a few tombstone dates in my day or something like that. And I don't know.
I didn't hear that.
I don't even know what I meant
Chris.
when I said that. Like, what does that even mean?
I don't know.
Chris, did you have the chat open on the right side of your screen
Yeah.
so you could see what we were saying, right? When you're making your
He
final
responded
statement.
to me earlier.
Jacob requested.
No, I haven't looked at this in a long time. I forgot it was there.
When you have it closed, though, doesn't it show when they talk above their head?
It has definitely showed. Sorry, Jacob.
It's okay.
Yeah, I haven't. I've been kind of zoned out. I've been looking at other things. So I just completely missed it. But David, did you get my email yet?
I'll check. I was taking my thumbnail pic. Did you send it to my normal Gmail or the Hostel Discourse Gmail?
I think your normal Gmail.
I'll have to resend it when I get home, but I'm gonna head out. So I will see you guys later.
All right, I'll
Joe.
officially end the episode 23 live broadcast. I hope you guys liked it. The one person watching right now.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.